Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us for season 2 of the Chronicles Chat. I cannot be more excited to kick off this season with our first guest. I've been trying to get this gentleman on the podcast for probably a year, harassing him with DMs and sliding on in there. But without further ado, I would like to introduce Alex Zudell, not Zundel, as Maddie Marshall likes to call you. Alex Zudell. I could do a proper introduction. Owner, co-founder of Tiki's Paintball, owner, co-founder of MVPS, Maximum Velocity Paintball Series. I'm sure there's other things that you do as well that we'll learn about. But without further ado, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks.
So we'll just kind of, I don't think we can kind of skip over the niceties here because this is going to be a great episode. I'm so excited. So tell me about yourself a little bit.
Cool. Well, that's the main thing I work with is paintball. I do just about everything there is to do with paintball, just from getting kids into the sport from like ages 8 and up to the tournament side of things, like the highest division stuff you can mess with all the way down to the lowest beginner stuff. So like Tiki's Paintball Park, it's a recreational field to play paintball at in Tampa. And then the MVPS, Max Velocity Paintball Series, is my, more experienced tournament series for people to compete in all the way in the southeast of Florida.
Amazing. So you see this full spectrum, which is incredibly interesting. And I don't think a lot of people really have that perspective. And then you're also a player as well. You grew up playing paintball and then still play events or tournaments, I guess, for those that don't know a lot about paintball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big part of it for me. I've been playing for 15, 20 years almost, and kind of, got into the tournament scene, did it a bunch, competed a ton, and finally, kind of got deeper into it and thought to myself, we could do a better job than some of these other tournament promoters. That's how the MVPS started. And then eventually just kind of vertically aligned just my businesses and whatnot. We started the Tiki's field and they kind of work off each other. And it's just kind of fun being in the sports industry like that.
Can you kind of talk about a little bit of the pros and cons of being a player and having such a large knowledge about the support, and then also being involved in the business side as well, because and kind of to not ruin what you're about to answer, but it's got to be an interesting dynamic to know what the players want. And obviously that adds a lot of value there, but then kind of the sword and shield of it all is, shouldn't he know what the players want? You know what I mean? So could you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a big thing we preach with the MVPS is we're the players league, and myself and pretty much most of my, higher level staff, we all still compete in the sport. We're still relevant in it. We're not retired in any sense of it. So we really try to make the league how we want it to be to compete in ourselves. And I know you're kind of talking the downside of that is the more tournaments I host and work in, the less I get to play and have fun in at the same time too. So there's that kind of double-edged blade of it.
So tell me about, kind of you starting to play paintball and for, I guess, the audience to kind of have a better understanding. So paintball is where it can be 5-on-5, it can be 1-on-1, but for the most part, it's 5-on-5 for tournament paintball. Yeah. There's also, and that the tournament paintball that we're referring to is the blow up bunkers. There are also now 10-man series that involve a kind of variety of fields, but probably the most common that people would understand is the woods ball out in the woods and kind of hide behind trees and man-made props, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term. So tell me about the beginning and where did you start in all of that?
Yeah, so I started, just like you're saying, just started in the woods, playing in the backyard. Or my dad bought me a Tippmann way, way back. And then eventually I got to an organized field. I think a lot of people also start this way, just going to a friend's birthday party. They wanted to do an outing. That's kind of one of the things we specialize at the Tiki's field, is having groups out there and playing. That's one of the big benefits of playing, at an organized field like Tiki's too, is just the safety aspect. we have referees there and guides that help, make sure everybody's masks are on and the spectators are safe watching and things like that. But yeah, that's the big thing. Starting in the woods, like Kevin was saying with the 10-man series, it's kind of jumped on to how a lot of people started playing paintball. And you play fields in the woods. You can still play on some of those inflatable tournament fields also, but there's a lot of kind of brings you back to your past. It's a lot of fun doing those too.
Wonderful. And then so you kind of transitioned, you got started in the woods, and then started kind of, getting started in the more kind of tournament style of play. But when did you start playing tournaments and getting involved with, the team aspect and stuff?
Yeah, so 2005 is when I played my first World Cup, which was pretty much I played every single World Cup since 2005.
And tell everybody what World Cup is.
So World Cup, it's the largest paintball tournament on the whole earth, the whole planet. And it's been going on, well before 2005. I jumped into the middle of it, but it's been growing each year. It's bigger and bigger, but it's international tournaments. Teams come from Europe and Asia, come across into the US to play. So I've been lucky. It's been in my backyard. It's in Orlando, Florida. It's pretty much where it's been the last 20 or so years. So I've been a little spoiled with that. It's a little easier for me to play.
So can you kind of talk about how would you suggest somebody start playing paintball? Because obviously, I think when people think of it, there's two things that they think of is how much is this going to cost? Meaning, do I need to buy equipment? And then the other thing they think about is this going to hurt, or how does this go? So tell me a little bit about what you kind of tell new players, or what you would tell somebody that's interested in playing paintball, how they could get involved.
Yeah. So one of the tough things is it kind of has a little high barrier to entry as far as the age limit. So 8 is the youngest that we do it at my field. But most people kind of get into it around ages 10 and up. But after that, people talk about the pain side of things. It's really pretty irrelevant. Once you start playing, the adrenaline gets pumping, you're having a good time, you're focused on playing. You'll see people get shot multiple times, and the referees have to start yelling at them and say, "Hey, dude, you're out. You got shot." And they don't even realize it sometimes. And as far as the cost side, it's definitely on a pricier side compared to a lot of other sports, just since it has the paintballs you have to buy each time. But at the same time, it's not that expensive. You can come out, especially at the Tiki's field, you can come out and spend 27 to 40 bucks and you can play the whole day. That includes, like your entry for the entire park, all your rental equipment, the paintballs you'd be using the whole day too. So it really can be pretty affordable too.
Yeah, I agree. And, I actually started, I was invited out with a group of friends from school. Had a rental gun or something like that. And I fell in love with it. And I went out and bought a Tippmann 98. That was my first paintball gun with some CO2 and a cheaper I think it was like under 150 bucks to kind of get my own equipment. So I know that that's obviously a huge thing, and it can get more and more pricier. But I think, a lot of times, if you really do love something, whatever your hobby is going to be, whether it's, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than car racing or, go-karts or motocross or, a lot of those kind of high adrenaline activities. So, and it's not like, football or ball grass sports are that much cheaper either. Softball, baseball, buying bats and clothes and, practices and joining, traveling to tournaments and stuff, you're going to incur a lot of those costs. So now, so you start playing paintball, you get involved, you catch the bug, you fall in love with it. How would you suggest somebody, kind of starting a team or getting involved with that?
Yeah. So I'll keep referring to the Tiki's field. I spoke before about just vertical integration with, the field in my MVPS series. So we kind of offer, the park's kind of organized in a way to get people into those tournaments in a sense. You can start out up close and you're just playing on some of our recreational fields. And then eventually you can kind of graduate to the tournament side of the fields, the inflatable ones. And then it pushes you into, the Tiki's field has our factory team in a sense. It has places for people to play beginner tournaments and then get into the more experienced things. So I know there's a lot of good Facebook group outlets out there. I have I have one, it's like MVPS official, is just where a general place for players to talk and recruit players and stuff like that. So it's pretty easy to get into. Luckily, it's a really welcoming group of people. Everybody in paintball really wants to see it grow, and they're always happy to bring people out and have fun with each other playing. So it's pretty easy to get into the tournament side of things if you really, really want to.
So tell me about, obviously, we kind of went into a short synopsis. So you have Tiki's Paintball, which is your paintball park field with multiple different types of fields that you can play at. There's, what they call rec ball, which is more of the casual, unorganized. You can come out as yourself or with some friends and kind of jump on. And then you have kind of the tournament practices and stuff like that. But how did you make the decision to kind of, stop playing paintball as much and wanting to get in the business of paintball? How did that come about?
Yeah, it was a real gradual process. It was interesting. And when I started the league, it was pretty much in 2013. We had our first event. Our first full season was 2014. And same, I was in college at the time. I was going to University of Central Florida. And I think it caused my 4-year degree to turn into an 8-year degree because I was just more and more into the business side of things, taking semesters off here and there and whatnot. So it just kind of crept up on me. All of a sudden, it was a full-time job and paying bills and stuff like that. And so it's real gradual. It wasn't totally a decision to jump into. It happened real fast.
Yeah. So how would you suggest? I know a lot of people, it's like, I fall in love with something, how would you suggest somebody to work in paintball or, start a field? Or obviously starting a field is probably a much more significant undertaking, but how would you suggest somebody get, started working in paintball?
Yeah, well, I guess, we're always hiring at the league, I guess. And one easy transition a lot of players do is they're interested in playing, but it's a little pricier doing the tournament side of things, so they'll jump into refereeing sometimes. So it's kind of fun. You're there, you'll be able to watch the sport. It's a whole nother viewing point of being on the field and then playing and stuff like that. A lot of referees, they'll ref one day, then they'll play the other day at the tournament, so it kind of offsets their costs a bit. It's definitely not an easy job being a referee at all. You're getting shot at a lot, but it's a cool viewing point to be there, and it's definitely a position I suggest a lot of players to try one time just to kind of see that aspect of it. So it's kind of one way to be able to work and play at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as you get, I guess, more experience, there's opportunities to, work with actual soft good and hard good companies and things like that. And, create, whether it's some type of clothing design or paintball, clothing design or gun design or something like that. Talk to me a little bit, about the safety of paintball. So, I know a lot of people are very fearful. You always talk about people getting shot in the eye or something, crazy. So talk to me a little bit about some of the safety precautions that you guys require at Tiki's and that are in paintball generally.
Yeah. So I remember way back before we started the field and we're doing research into it, and we're pulling off a lot of just stats on safety and a number of different things. And one of them was, in the grand scheme of sports, paintball was one of the safest sports. I want to say it had less injury rates than like bowling and stuff like that. And it's really, paintball's incredibly safe as long as your mask is on. And that's it. As long as your mask is on, you really can't get injured. After that, it's just regular sports injuries. Maybe you twist your knee, just like in soccer, football, or anything else. But even that's pretty low. Just the amount of time that you're playing some of these games, one paintball match is, it's like 12 to 15 minutes of actual game time instead of a football games, an hour or so. So it's pretty safe. It's very safe.
And then also too, there's these things they call them, they're not barrel plugs. They used to be barrel plugs, but the barrel, barrel covers, barrel socks. They've got a couple of different names, but I imagine everybody's required to have one of those over their barrel, which is basically the shaft that the gun shoots the paintballs out of. So I imagine they're supposed to have a covering over that as well.
Yeah, that's the other side of the safety. It's pretty much just the mask and the barrel sock, and everything else is really safe at that point. That's just something when you're off the playing field, when you come back into the pits or on the spectator side of the nets, you put the barrel sock on, and then you're allowed to take your mask off. And so it just keeps the gun safe at all times. And like Kevin was saying, it used to use barrel plugs. And the same thing, it was just a ball blocking device. The plugs used to be, if you'd shoot it, once or twice, the plug would stop the paintballs. But if you shot a couple times, the plug would come out. So that now this new barrel sock design, it just kind of keeps it. You could shoot 100 paintballs into it and it won't ever come off. So it's just very safe. It's real simple.
And then it's so serious, I guess, in the tournament level and even up to the professional level that you get actually penalized because there's the straps under the mask now. So there's actually penalties now for people that don't have their chin straps on and mask on properly, even when they enter the field, as soon as they cross the net.
True.
So tell me about what you think paintball looks like in 5 years. And I'm kind of prompt you a little bit here. I've been involved with paintball. You've been a couple years longer than me, but probably 10 to 12 years I've seen it. And I've seen the 50 cal. I've seen talking about limiting the amount of paint that you can bring on the field, lowering the BPS. I mean, when we first started, it was 15 balls a second, which was quite glorious back in the day. That was when if you ran to the corner of the field and made it, you were an actual hero. Tell me about what you see in the next 5 years, as or even further than that, for paintball as a sport and kind of the future. And you can talk about it from both sides, the tournament side as well as the business side.
Yeah. So the cool thing is, I really see paintball being on the up right now. A lot of people talk about paintball was huge in 2009 before the economy crashed. And everybody says it'll never be back to how it was back then, but it's actually statistically more participation than even back then than it ever has been. I really see paintball turning into a lot more of the professionally viewed sport than it is, just in the backwoods, people playing. It's getting a lot more mainstream, especially just us building this Tiki's field. It was about a 3-year project just to get open. It was a year of planning and finding the property, then about 2 years of building it. So I think there's going to be some more kind of business-minded people getting into the paintball sport and realizing the potential of it and seeing where they can take it. So I could see, but possibly maybe like some stadium aspects, at least just bleacher viewing and stuff like that. I know one example a friend of mine was talking about is they went to a brand new tennis complex, and he works in the paintball industry, and he was being interviewed, or he was being toured around the tennis complex. And it's kind of similar setting of how a paintball field would be. They're smaller fields in a sense. Paintball field's about a third the size of a football field or so. So it's kind of closer to a tennis court. And just how that, those tighter knit stadiums are built around it. And he talked about how that complex was $3.5 million complex, for the sport of tennis and the tournaments they'll host there, and just the amount of money that they bring in, and trying to compare it to paintball. And, the numbers on paintball were way higher than that tennis stadium was bringing in at the time. But they spent all this money building that. So kind of feel like that comparatively would go into paintball. I just think people are going to start seeing it as a viable business opportunity to invest in.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kind of along with that is, what do you think are some of the things that kind of hold paintball back from expanding? I know one of the biggest things that I can think of is, obviously, when we talked about it earlier, to get started in paintball is not that expensive. This is how I used to talk about it with friends, is to get started rather is not that expensive, but to continue playing and be competitive that's when it gets expensive. And the biggest cost is obviously paint prices. I mean, I think just with the cost of goods, it's probably something that we're going to have to live with. But, can you kind of think of any other significant barriers or entry that the industry could work on as a whole?
Like you're saying, the paint prices are up there. I'm not sure how you get around that, because especially just with COVID and transportation costs and stuff, the prices for paint are even kind of going up on my end as a buyer of them. I don't know. That's a tricky one. I mean, a lot of people say, some of the tournaments and stuff, like the big National League, their entry prices are too big and they're not giving enough prizes and stuff like that. At the same time, the tournament series has to make a profit to expand what they're doing and keep doing what they're doing. So it's tough to analyze that too much. That's a tough question.
Well, one of the big things too is that, I'll kind of, ask you on this. I along with that, I think the future of paintball is kind of held back because there's only so many pro teams. And if you have people that aren't able to aspire to be a professional in that type of industry, then why are they going to continue doing it? Obviously they'll do it for the love, and we have a very kind of unique sport, but how do you think professional paintball can expand? And do you think the lack of player payment could also be an issue with it as well? Because obviously, unless you have a large, backer, I guess, for lack of better terms, it's very hard to promote, being a pro paintball player. So
yeah, I know mostly on topic to that is, I feel like one of those things holding it back is just most sports that has that professional doing, just say football, they have that progression from high school football to college football to professional football, and paintball is missing that college gap. The college, there's a college league, but it's very small.
Interesting. Okay.
And I thought it was about for a while, kind of back my mind, is if they could just get pushed into college markets better, it gives players that ability to stick with the sport like they do. Because I have tons of friends with, they're in high school, they're playing, they're competing, and then once they get to college, they really got to decide if, hey, do I have the money to keep doing this, or do I just got to stop paintball together and just focus on college? And if they had those college programs more integrated, then they would be able to keep it up and then keep playing the sport. So
yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think the college program would be huge, and the funding through universities and schools. But I think it all kind of goes hand in hand, because when we talk about football teams, for example, just to put it on that pillar, the reason why there are owners that are willing to pay these players is because there's TV rights and sponsorships that are willing to support that. So yeah, I think kind of you hit it on the head from the beginning. In order to really grow the sport, we have to work on that viewership, I guess you could say, for lack of better terms, of the monetization of the content, getting people in to be interested in watching. And then it'll kind of all snowball from there, because those monies will obviously be able to be reallocated.
So that's a weird thing too, is paintball's funded majority by the players that actually play it. And I feel like no other sport's like that. It's funded by the viewership or the ticket sales. And paintball just has to find that flip to, kind of get more people interested enough to want to watch it. I know a big debate, I'm sure about too, is just getting paintball more easily to follow on TV, because there's a lot of good webcasts and stuff that do televise it in a sense, but to make that leap all the way to national TV is just a whole other thing to kind of keep people's attention with it.
Yeah, I mean the rules are a little, when you have and I know all sports have a significant handbook, they would have to, and I think it comes with a little bit of more understanding because people grew up watching it. But I don't think that common people understand, or it would be very difficult to understand what a 1-for-1 is, or a 2-for-1, or wiping penalty, or playing on penalty, or something like that. So I think until we standardize that across, because the rule, and the other thing is too, the rules change every year. I mean, so it's like, until we standardize a rule book where we can look back. I mean, if you travel with a basketball, it was traveling in 1995, and it'll be, traveling in 2035. Yeah. So until we kind of figure out what a coherent or the common rule book is for the future, it's going to be difficult as well to bring in viewership. So
that's true. That's something too to think about, is paintball's still a really young sport comparatively. I think really came about in the 70s or 80s or so, at least, like when tournaments were probably like 80s, 90s and whatnot. So it's still, 40, 50 years old compared to some of these sports that have been, they've been able to get their rule books refined, twice as amount of time kind of thing. So I feel like it's getting better with the rule book, but it still has a long way to go. I mean, this last year, I always kind of keep a note section for myself to try to tweak the rule book when possible. So yeah, definitely could be better, needs to be better.
What do you think about women in the sport of paintball? Obviously, it's continuing to grow. We're seeing more female players. Got to be, I remember back when, 10 years ago when I was playing, it was, just Destiny paintball. That was about it. And it seems like that's expanding substantially.
Yeah. Women in the sport, so everybody wants to see it happen. It's happening more and more. Definitely, it's cool seeing it at the Tiki's field a lot. There's a lot of women that play out there, but getting them the rest of the way into the tournament side of things just hasn't been as popular as everybody would like it to. I mean, it's a hard gap to bridge, I guess. It's just a dirtier sport in a sense. You're just, getting shot by the paintballs. There's a dirt aspect of it that you're diving into and crawling around. But there's definitely with the tournament series, there's more and more women's series coming around. I actually even heard that there might be a women's pro division starting next year with the NFL.
Wow.
I don't know, don't quote me on that, but yeah, they're working on that.
You heard it here first, folks. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, probably.
No, I think it's great to see more women in the sport. I think obviously that's a huge, way for paintball to grow. I can't thank you enough for all your insight. I think paintball is something that a lot of us that, I like, you said you've been doing it 15, 20 years. I think I started playing when, I was, probably 13, 14 years old, and that's been 15 years. So, I think it's something that'll continually get better. And as long as we have more people like yourself that love the sport and want to see it grow, I think it'll keep getting better. So I can't thank you enough. And I will basically end with my final question is, how can people find you? Shout out, what is, give me the URL. Obviously it'll be in the description as well, but the URL for the Tiki's Paintball and the paintball series, MVPS.
Yeah, definitely. Our big platform is Facebook at the moment. So just MVPSevents.com is our website. And then for Tiki's Paintball, it's tikispaintballpark.com. But reach out to us on Facebook. We're really responsive. We'll answer your message quickly. Any questions you have about playing locally or regionally in the tournament series, we can answer everything for you.
Perfect. So just so everybody knows, Tiki's Paintball is located in Tampa, Florida, probably 15 minutes from downtown Tampa, 20 minutes, 25 minutes from Wesley Chapel, and 15 minutes from Riverview and Brandon. So right in the center of everything. And you guys are open Friday afternoons, typically a good portion of the time. And then Saturdays and Sundays, rain or shine, correct?
Yeah, those are our main days, just open to the public. We'll definitely open up any day during the week too for private parties. Really only need 10 or more. We'll do a lot of corporate outings and fun stuff like that, parties, birthday parties, everything.
And then the MVPS tournament series, you can be basically any type of level. So basically from Division 6, where you probably, may have never played a tournament before, and that's 3-man, correct? So just 2 players. And then it goes all the way up to Division 2 in some events, which is probably mid-level to like high level players, correct? Yeah,
we try to cover as many of the divisions that we can. Our next tournament's in October. It's the 15th through the 17th. It's in Kissimmee, actually, this time. It's Austin Tyndall Regional Park. It's a cool soccer complex, football complex, and they accommodate paintball there as well for us.
Perfect. Yeah, I've actually played there. It's a great field, always a great event. So Alex, thank you again for joining us. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. We're going to have more great episodes for this season. I don't know if it'll be as good as Alex's because it took me a year to get them on. I have to throw that out there. I have to give you a hard time, but well worth the wait. If you guys have a question for Alex, make sure you hit him up on Facebook. You guys also can leave a comment below, and I'm happy to shoot those to him as well. Thank you guys so much. Stay well, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Alex.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin.